All right, we're live now, I believe. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Why Read series. This is episode 42. It's been a long time since I've had a Why Read episode, and I'm so excited today to have two very special guests. I have here Jake from Man Carrying Thing, and I have SirJordanDru. And I always try to put a lot of thought into who I put on Why Read and how I pair my guests. And actually, you two came up in my thoughts a long time ago, like not a long time ago, but maybe a couple months ago, I had this thought brewing in my head, and I finally got the courage to reach out and organize this. So I'm so excited to have you both here today. And before I screw up, because I do this sometimes and ask, "How are you?" I always like to start this series or this show with the same question every time, which is why read? And so this is a question that is not necessarily a why did you start getting into reading in the first place question. It's more a question about right now in your life with so many things competing for your attention, so many pastimes, so many distractions, so many things going on. What inspires you to pick up a book? And there is no right or wrong answer. It's not a quiz, but I always love to hear people's answer to this question. So, Jake, why read?
Oh man, I get the tough question first. Yeah, that's I mean, it's such an interesting question. It's something I think anybody who's like seriously interested in reading has to question because it is a huge time commitment when life is crazy busy and the world does not prioritize reading as an activity in any way whatsoever. So to sit down quietly, such an isolated activity, it's just I think it's good for you, you know. And I don't try to make like a moral judgment on people who don't read or who do read, but I do think that it's just good for your brain, you know. And to me, it's just a matter of like, you know, why breathe, you know, because you have to get into that world. You want to watch movies, you want to read books. Are their own thing, you know. You can't experience a work of art in the same way as you can with a book. So, yeah, that's why I read.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that answer, and I know that about you as well too, that you are big on it's wonderful for everyone to pick up a book. It doesn't matter what the book is. Just trying to have an open mind about that, which is something I've noticed actually on both of your channels that you've both spoken about, like letting go of snobbery around genre or type of book, but really just embracing literature. And so, yeah, that's a fabulous answer.
Oh, I'm a
And
huge snob though, but I just pretend, you know.
oh, okay.
I'm actually very judgmental of what people read, but you know, publicly I just say, yeah, reading is good, you know, read whatever.
Well, we'll
It's
get
like a
into
gateway
that.
drug. If you want to read something that's not great, then read it, but hopefully, you know, you're reading something else down the road too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it leads closer to us for sure.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm constantly being called out for being a snob, so we'll see if we can get into snobbery as well. But yes, and so Jordan, how about you? Why read?
I feel like one of the buzzwords for 2026 is going analog, like disconnecting from everything because there's so much crap going on, there's so much misinformation. But I I feel like there's nothing more honest than a good story
Mm,
because there's so much information out there, and I feel like everything's confusing if you don't understand the context. But when I read a story, I get the context. I know why characters are doing something if the story's good, if it's written well. And I just feel like stories are the best way to transmit values and beliefs and ideas in a way that kind of, it's like when I'm trying to give my dog medicine, I wrap up the pills in some lunch meat so that way it actually swallows it. I feel like stories do that for people when it comes to information and values and things you should do and how you should act. And it's just when I read a story, it's only me reading it. It's not an algorithm pushing the certain parts of it into my brain. I'm not given one specific angle because of my background. I get to read what's on the page and I get to form my own opinion. And it's magic. It's magic. And it's just an honest way of learning things. And I will make moral judgments. I think you're a better person if you read. And I think if you are constantly being exposed to new ideas and stories, it's going to force you to grow. I think we all could grow a little bit in this crazy, tumultuous time.
oh, that's neat. So you feel like it's an avenue towards growth. And I know that in one of your videos, actually, you talked a little bit about that. I think both of you responded to this topic that was surfacing for a while there, maybe because of some kind of AI tweet if I have the background right. I might have the background wrong about that, about self-help books versus fiction, if you all know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Yeah. So thoughts about fiction versus nonfiction or self-help.
I mean, there self-help is its own thing. I think reading nonfiction is wonderful. I think for me, the issue of like people ignoring fiction, especially men who aren't reading fiction these days, it's that there's a sense of there's not a utility in reading it. It has to be like serve a function. It has to help you in some way or give you a moral lesson, or you're always trying to better yourself. And I think it's an element of our like productivity culture where we're all hustling to make more money and get more followers and do all these things, and it's like that shouldn't I don't that shouldn't be the be all end all of why we're reading anything. And if you want to read a self-help book, by all means. And I'm not saying there aren't any good self-help books out there, but it's like having a diet of anything. Like, do you just want to be eating Cheetos all day? You got to eat some, you want some substance too. And I think that you're exercising a different part of your brain when you're reading fiction. And I think that it's because there's no like didactic lesson. Typically, when you read a work of fiction, people treat it like it's just frivolous or unimportant. And also that ties into the history of novels, which have always been treated, not always, but I mean, like when they first were, like the early development of the novels, they were treated as like a middle class, frivolous art form. So it's kind of pervasive and just kind of lingers on, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts
Yeah,
about
and
that? Go ahead.
yeah, like as a former like self-help junkie, like I didn't really start reading fiction until my wife told me, like, do you want to read something you actually enjoy? Like she always felt like I was reading just to learn a little factoid to use in a debate, because my background was politics. I was working on campaigns in high school and I was preparing to go to law school. So I felt like I was wasting my time if I wasn't reading something I could actually apply. And self-help has value. Sometimes even though they all teach a lot of the same things, they just frame it in different words. And sometimes one frame works for somebody else. So it can be helpful. But like this whole thing about only learning things that have utility. I know so many things. Like I could tell you things about Grover Cleveland's presidency, and that's real. It happened, but that's never going to positively affect my life. It's just a factoid that's in there. It's basically fiction. It doesn't exist. It's fairy dust. So once I started reading stories more, and I was like getting inspired by fictional characters that aren't real, I was like, oh yeah, like reading about resilience or endurance is really cool. You could learn some things, how to frame your life, about how to keep moving forward. But for example, if I watch Naruto, I see the character of Rock Lee, I'm like, oh, that's what hard work can get you. That's endurance, that's perseverance. And I feel like it's much easier to learn something if you're relating to a character. And I still read self-help. I'm recovering. I'm in remission right now. I'm not currently reading it, but I always read a few a year because sometimes it helps refresh things. But it's just a good story. It just hits different.
That's so true. Yeah. I think on that one list that I'm thinking about where there were some self-help books being promoted, I noticed Flow by, and I'm always gonna butcher this name, but Chickmitzi High, however you say his name. I love that book. That book I read so many years ago. And I don't know if I would even call it a self-help book as much as a psychology book that talks about the components of what creates a flow experience. But for me, that was just so powerful and yeah, I don't know. So I definitely see value in all forms as well. And I like what you were saying too, Jake, about how it's a diet. You don't want to necessarily just eat Cheetos all the time, but there are different ways of getting things out of fiction versus getting things out of nonfiction. So that's
Well,
neat.
Joanna, are you going to tell us why you read? You can't weasel out of the question. I know you've
Oh,
probably mentioned it before.
you know what? You are the second guest, I think, who's ever asked me the question back.
Yeah, because you try to weasel out of it. You're like, hey, I don't have to.
I'll call out the first person who did was Murphy Napier.
Oh,
She actually
nice.
was the first one on this show who asked, "Hey, Joanna, has anybody asked you why you read?" And then, yeah, you're asking me this question. I love it. Thank you. This is always such an interesting question to me, and it's something that I think about a lot because I feel like even though like what you were saying, Jordan, about the nice thing about reading a fiction book is you have the context. You're not being swayed by things trying to get your attention and maybe pull you into a story or idea that without all the context or whatever. I feel like even in the book world, we're being swayed one way or another with what we should read, as we were just talking about. And for me, so it is a question of like, why do I read? And this is such an interesting question to me because I was reflecting on my recent March reads, the books I read in March, which I loved. I enjoyed all of them and I got something out of everything I read for the most part. There was one flop for me. But at the same time, I realized a lot of what I've been reading this year has been interesting and I've appreciated it and I've gotten something out of it. But they haven't been books that have personally resonated for me. Like I haven't felt like a deep personal resonance with the book in a long time.
Hmm.
And I've been questioning that. And I think that's something I want to find. I want right now to find a book that I can personally resonate with. And when I say personally resonate with a book, there are a couple of things that I have to say about that. One is that I don't always read for personal resonance. And here's why. Because I think sometimes I do want to read to, like, for example, let's say I'm new to a fiction. Like, Jake, I know you read a lot of crime fiction. I am very new to that genre. So if I were to read a crime fiction book, I don't know that I would expect to have this deep personal resonance with it, but it would inform me about something about the genre. And then maybe the more crime fiction I read, I'd build more connections. And then I would suddenly be like, oh, this is so cool because I get this genre and I understand what this author's doing. And it would get exciting for me. Whereas like, yeah, so I don't always read to books to have this feeling of personal resonance, but I do love to find that now and then. I love to feel like my heart is connecting to what I read. And the second thing I would say about that is that for me to personally resonate with the book, it doesn't have to be about a character that I am exactly like. And the example I'm going to give here, which I would love to talk to you guys about, is Stoner by John Williams. That actually is one of my favorite books of all time. And I think that
I
surprises
spotted it over there behind
you.
your
See
shoulder.
it? Yeah, it's on the shelf. Yes, it is one of my favorite books of all time. Actually, Buddy read that with my mother, and we could not stop talking about the book for years. Like we just were obsessively talking about it. Every time we called each other, we'd end up talking about Stoner because there was something about the questions that evoked about what does it mean to lead a meaningful life? What does success mean? And how are we measuring ourselves or letting society measure that for us? And I don't know, just certain questions about that, specifically about what it means to lead a meaningful life that just deeply got to me. And I felt very similarly about Remains of the Day by Ishiguro, which is about an English butler. I'll never know what it's like to be an English butler in the early 20th century, but for some reason, the way that character, the questions that were evoked in that book through that character personally resonated for me. So again, I don't feel like I need books to resonate with me all the time, and books don't have to be about me for me to find a personal resonance with it. But I do feel like I would love to find that. I don't know exactly what the recipe is all the time to find that, but I love to find books that speak to me somehow on that level.
So how do you find new books to read? Do you have like a strict TBR, like I got to read these within the, because you said you're struggling to find books that resonate with you recently. So I'm wondering what your selection process is.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to bring the question back to you too.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I do like to have some books that, you know what, I do always make a series TBR at the end of the year. And I used to make a standalones TBR. I stopped doing that, but yeah, I honestly, it's been pure chaos. I've been embracing chaos with my TBR lately for the most part, unless I get roped into a buddy read. And then if I get roped into a buddy read, it's pretty exciting. But honestly, like some of the best books have been books that I picked up on a whim that I didn't expect to completely changed my life. Like a Stoner was kind of like that. I almost picked that up on a whim, and that was such an incredible experience. And then some books I do plan to read. So I read Lonesome Dove a couple of years ago, for example, and I knew I was going to love the book, and sure enough, I did. So yeah, I think that it's kind of a mixture of trying to listen to. I do watch a lot of channels and try to listen for things that speak to digging into deeper questions or having like this incredible experience with the prose. I do love, so speaking of book snob here, I do love books that have unique writing styles or that are just able to write in a way that is evocative or interesting. So that somehow draws me in. But yeah, for the most part, I have been embracing chaos a little bit with my TBR. How about you, Jake? How do you go about picking the books that you read?
Oh yeah, it's total chaos as well. I have, I mean, it's insanity. I mean, on one level, I have like I started a book club this year on my Patreon, so I have like patrons voting on what we read, and I have like general themes. We just read By Night in Chile by Bolaño, so we're trying lots of different stuff. But it's like I'm usually reading like 4 or 5 books at once, so I'm like jumping around between things, just kind of whatever my mood is on a given moment when I'm like, what do I want to read? And usually I'm drawn to like just a certain type of writing, you know. Sometimes you want that punchy, you know, I want to read a, you know, James Elroy or something, or sometimes I'm in the mood for something slower or like a classic book or, you know, whatever, just trying new things. And I really love finding new writers and new books. And my problem is then finishing the books because I just go jump. I just jump around and um, sometimes I just buy a bunch of books and never get to them. But I don't know. It's just part of the fun of like exploring. So I don't know. That's how how are you, Jordan? Do you have any a specific process?
So I'm obstinate to a fault. So if a book's very popular, I'm going to avoid it for the longest time until people stop talking about it, and then I jump on the bandwagon years later. But generally, if an author is getting a lot of like attention for one book, I'll say, "But what's another book of theirs? I'm gonna read that instead." So that way, I could talk to people and be like, "Well, I haven't read this. I read this book from them, and I heard that one might even be better. I'm sure you haven't heard about that." So there's part of me in there that wants to just read something that people aren't reading. Also, I this year I started doing like a wheel where like I kind of like let the wheel determine what I read. That's been kind of fun. It's led to some stinkers, it's led to some really good ones. And every year I like choose three or four booktubers where I'm like, whatever their favorite books of the like whatever their favorite books are from last year, I'm gonna read those. So like this year, I'm reading a lot of books from I Samwise and Jimmy Nuts, particularly. Like they've been kind of the main focus for my TBR this year. So yeah, I just pick my muses and I kind of just like read by mood.
Hmm.
And my friends and I, we started a book club last year, and we all have we have varying taste. And right now, like for example, we're reading like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I'm hating it. I'm about halfway through. It's very modern, very transgressive, and yeah, the book club's been very nice. So just trying to read as many different books as possible, but also finding some kind of general theme for the channel. I think that's one goal for the YouTube channel is to kind of find what I'm going to focus on.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm all over the place. It's chaotic.
Would you
yeah.
say you both prioritize fantasy mostly? Like, is that your favorite genres though?
You go first, Jordan.
You know, I've been thinking about that question a lot because I always have like seen myself as a fantasy reader, but I've been reading more and more just general fiction and science fiction. Like my top 10 favorite books, I think there's only like 2 fantasy books on there.
Hmm.
Like I love Stoner. I love The Exorcist. I love horror. I love sci-fi. So I think I'm going through a bit of identity crisis because I've always thought of myself as a fantasy reader because that's what got me into fantasy. That's what got me into reading. I've been liking a lot more classics. I'm going more in a more snobbish direction.
Yeah.
I'm trying to read, you know, distinguished books. I think I'm kind of going more in that direction for the next little bit. I think.
And that's the direction everyone go. I mean, that's the point of the gateway drug of reading anything. You know, you start to go down rabbit holes and find what you really love to read more than anything. Okay, Joanna, what is
Oh, no.
you like fantasy?
Yeah, no, I really love that. You know, it's so interesting. For me, fantasy is my number one favorite genre, but I do love reading widely. And I did want to ask you both about that too, because I noticed that for both of you, that you both read widely, even though it seems like you do stick to some genres here and there, right? But I do think there for me is a lot of value in reading widely. And I'll go ahead and say this. I am so ill-read when it comes to classics, which is something I've been trying to remedy the last couple of years. So I've been wanting to get more into classic literature and into, I guess, more literary fiction, for lack of a better way of describing that genre, and just other kinds of genres in general. So yeah, I don't know. I called myself a fantasy channel because when I started in 2021, that was mostly what I reviewed and talked about, and I was reading. I was reading Mlaz and Book of the Fallen and other things. And then I think it was the next year when I picked up Stoner. And then once I looked at my top 10 books of that year, I want to say that there were quite a few books on there that were not fantasy. So I started to wonder if I'm having a, I don't know, reading existential crisis or something, which
Yeah.
I guess is not, like you said, Jordan, it's probably not good for channel stuff, but like I can't help myself. Like I feel like I have to try to get outside the box now and then. And yeah, it's so interesting because of this identity thing when it comes to reading. Like when I was younger, and I won't give away my age here, but when I was younger, I remember when I was back in high school that everybody was stereotyped according to the type of music they listened to. Like you were either, I don't know, a preppy person who listened to this type of music, or the alternative grunge crowd, or you were this type of crowd, or whatever, country crowd, listening to country music. Everybody was classified according to the music they listened to. And nowadays, it feels to me like Gen Z is mostly listening to a lot of other kinds of music. Like it's an eclectic Spotify list. But when it comes to reading, especially when it comes to content, there seems to be this algorithm push to stick to a genre. I mean, I'm not saying that's true for everyone, but largely speaking, I think there's something about that. And I'm like, that's so interesting. That's so interesting. Now it's like you're reading and your shelves behind you somewhat identify you in a weird way. And that's, I don't know. Am I wrong? I don't know.
I know. I think you're really onto like a lot of interesting topics there. Cause yeah, I think you're totally right in terms of like, and I think it's part of the death of monoculture too, where it's like we have the internet now. We have so many different mediums and ways to get exactly what we want and how we want it. You know, it's like you see it in fan fiction communities too, where you can like sort and find exactly the type of thing you want to read. And yeah, it's like it's crazy because there's so many. Someone said, "Yeah, Beckett is watching Jake over there. He's always staring at me." I think like there's so many different outlets and so many different niches that you can find, that you can be on one side of the internet and have no idea about the existence of anywhere else. And even in BookTube, there's so many different niches. You have like people focusing on fantasy, you have people focusing on so many different things. And I think that in a way, like, yeah, the internet and algorithms and everything want to classify you into one thing because it's just simple for people to find you and digest what you're creating as content. However, we're all human beings with tons of different interests. So at some point, we all kind of want to break out of the thing. I mean, I started making videos on fantasy books, and I was just talking about fantasy books for the most part. And that lasted very shortly because I got kind of tired of that, because while I love fantasy, it's not I can't live in fantasy, you know, all the time. And however, fantasy, if for a genre that someone's going to stick to primarily and talk about, it's such a flexible and malleable genre. There's so much variation and variety within fantasy that you can explore. You have like fantasy books that are secretly war books, or or romance books, or you know, so many different things. Yeah, I don't know. Fantasy booming right now is crazy, but yeah, just to go back to what you were saying, like it's really weird that we're all in our little bubbles and trying to break out and communicate to each other, even in something like the BookTube space is really a funny thing.
Yes, absolutely. And how about you, Jordan? So, Jordan, I notice you have been getting into a lot of short stories, which I think is fascinating because I don't feel like that gets talked
Nice.
about a lot on BookTube as well. So, tell us about your journey with short stories. What got you into that?
Well, I just remember a year and a half ago, I read this one short story, The Six Deaths of the Saint. And I loved it. It was 30 pages. I went on this giant adventure, all the emotions. But I read it like while it was like boiling pasta. Like I finished it before the meal was done, for I was cooking dinner. And I was like, dang, that's one of my favorite stories ever. And I just had to keep thinking about that. I'm like, okay, I'm reading these giant doorstoppers, these like big, thick books. And I'm like, but there are short stories out there that you could read in less than an hour, and it could change your entire outlook on things. So I thought I have a goal for this year. I want to read 300 short stories. and I'm about 120 through. I've already discovered so many new authors, so many authors I'm never going to get to for their longer work because short stories they're short. But it's so cool, or it's so interesting how short stories in previous decades were so important for like an author's prestige, like so many awards, so many magazines. And I feel like so many modern readers never pick up short stories, or they read a few, or they read like one collection from Stephen King like I did. And I've discovered like 40 new authors, and I've been reading a lot of great stories, award-winning short stories that nobody else like has read. I just feel like, especially on BookTube, it's a bit of an untapped market if someone wanted to focus on those. And just the idea of taking the reader on an adventure in like 8,000 to 30,000 words, it's kind of crazy. It's kind of a special thing. It's a totally different art form and not every author can do it. So
I agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. Do you have some short stories? Like, if you want to recommend to us a few short stories that you would recommend for anybody who's not a believer in short stories?
Daedalus the Devil's Will by E. Lily Yu was such a weird one, especially if you're like, you guys are artists, you're making content on YouTube. Like, it's about basically a devil is tempting an artist. It's being like, okay, there's 3 wishes I can grant you. Choose your path as an artist. And that one was just such a visceral short story that I was like reading it. And I guess the author took it offline, so you have to like either buy the magazine or listen to it. But just how it goes through all these scenarios that artists dream about and the downsides that go for each of the different paths. That was one of my favorite short stories, Daedalus the Devil's Will by E. Lily Yu. Anything by Ray Bradbury. Ray Bradbury is probably my favorite short story author. He writes about anything. He literally just has a premise. He could write any type of story, whether it be horror or fantasy. The Red Tower by Tom Ligotti. He's like a more niche horror author, and he writes philosophy as well. That was really unnerving, really strange. The 6 Deaths of the Saint. Oh, T. Kingfisher. Oh, sorry, I'm like going off on all these tangents.
You need to make a top 10 list on your short stories. That sounds awesome.
I should do that. That'd be good. The algorithm would like that.
Please do.
But
yeah,
T. Kingfisher writes about like nature and folklore. She's got like a Terry Pratchett-esque prose, not as clever, but all the whimsy. T. Kingfisher, I probably read like 40 of her short stories this year. She's been I keep returning back to her. So yeah, there's so many great stories out there, guys. You could,
that's
read dozens of them in a day.
So really cool comment here from Monica. I think short stories are most like music albums, sometimes nice to reflect on individual stories and the collection as a whole. I do this for memoirs that are essays too. That's great. Yeah, we got some Ligotti love here too. My friend David from Four Corners of the Page just recently did a video about Thomas Ligotti, and it was excellent. It made me want to pick up his books like soon because I guess he's somewhat Lovecraftian, but more cosmic horror. Yeah. I've actually been recently reading Borges. Have either of you read any Borges? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I have not.
This is the Aleph. If I could say it right. I always mispronounce that. And other stories.
Are you enjoying them so far?
Yes, but I cannot. They are not easy reads for me. Some of them are more accessible than others, but some of them I feel like I need to reread. Honestly, and I can't seem to read. They are perfect as short stories because I don't feel like I could read several in a day. Like I have to read a couple and just let it wash over me and let it seep in what he's saying. They are very surreal. I feel like the cover art does it justice because they're very, very surreal, labyrinthine. He uses actually the labyrinth as a constant motif in these stories. I guess in general he does that. And tiger stripes, that's another thing that he likes to draw towards, and reflections and mirrors. But they're very interesting. They're very much fantasy-like too. Just something very different. So yeah, I've been enjoying his work so far. Yeah.
Nice. I love Borges. Yeah, I think I need to read more of his stories, but like on the topic of short stories, it's incredible. You'd think like in our day and age where everything is shorter and shorter and faster, you'd think people would be drawn more to reading short stories, but that's not the case. Everyone's reading longer and longer novels, so it's one of those weird things. I think part of it is because there's no market for short stories anymore. No one's really paying for short stories, so it is weird to think that there was like a 40-year stretch of time in the mid-century where you could make a living selling short stories. Like there were writers who were just writing short stories, and that was their their whole income. It's really amazing. But yeah, short story writers, I love Bradbury, absolutely, like you're saying, Jordan. And I was getting into Lydia Davis. I love Hemingway, and I'm trying to read more Chekhov because the
Mm.
master of the short story. You got to read more Chekhov. But yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that his plays were really good too for Chekhov. I don't know if I'm misremembering, or maybe I'm thinking of somebody different, but
No, that's Anton
Chekhov.
Chekhov. Yeah, he wrote plays as well.
okay. Cool. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm so ill read when it comes to classics, but actually, I think the short story that made me a believer is The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Tolstoy. I mean, I guess it could be considered novella. I'm not sure if it's novella or short story, but I loved that story so much, and I felt like it had similar themes to me as Stoner, where it's like looking at what makes a meaningful life and how do you determine a life well lived, but in a much bleaker, more macabre way, I suppose. So,
Mm.
yeah. Philip says here, Borges is a brilliant short story writer. I've been listening while driving. Thank you, Philip. Just
Hey,
got home.
Professor Philip Chase.
Yay! I remember you were on Dear Dr. Fantasy back in the day too,
Oh, I know.
and
I love talking to him. He's
he's
he's he's
wonderful.
he's lovely. Yeah.
He is, he is. I'm having a great time. I actually am joining him for his Guy Gavriel Kay, great Guy Gavriel Kay read along for some of his Guy Gavriel Kay reads with
Nice.
Nerd Writer, which has been so much fun.
Oh,
We
cool.
actually, so I've been complaining about not finding books that personally resonate for me, and that's not totally true. But I guess I'm not counting rereads with that because this year I reread A Song for a Bond by Guy Gavriel Kay, and it's so good. I love that book so
I
much.
really need to read some Guy Gavriel Kay. I never have. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and, his books are so good, and they've been just as good on reread. I just reread The Lions of Alrasan, which is very much, evocative of medieval Spain with El
Mm.
Cid. Just brilliant novel. I've been loving it so, so much. So, yeah, that's actually been making my heart swoon, I will say that.
What would you
But,
recommend as like an introduction for Guy Gavriel Kay?
that is challenging, but I wanna say Lions of Alrasan because
Mm.
that's the book that I started my journey with. I know many who have started their journey with The Lions of Alrasan and have not been disappointed. Now it's very low fantasy. Tigana has much higher fantasy elements,
Mm.
but Tigana, there are just some aspects of it that I don't feel are as quite as refined as a couple of his other books personally. But I don't know. I think I would say that. Oh, yay. Philip loved The Lions of Alrasan.
Mm.
Philip, tell us so far, do you recommend a reading order so far for Guy Gavriel Kay? I know he's been reading them in publication order. So he actually actually, that's not true. He read Tigana first, but then he started with Fiona Var Tapestry. But I think Lions of Alrasan is a pretty solid place to start. If you are a song lover like me and you like troubadours, I would go ahead and say A Song for Urban. But I think Lions of
I have that
Alrasan.
one on my shelf. That's one I picked up a few years ago, but I haven't read it yet. So maybe I'll read that
Oh,
one first.
it's so good. I hope you like it, Jake. I hope you like it. Like I said, he's very, very minimal when it comes to the fantasy elements. It's much, much more based on historical fiction, but just gorgeous, gorgeous writing, uh, incredibly well-defined characters, beautiful use of setting. I love that he brings in elements such as like whether it's nighttime and the moon is shining or a cloud comes over the moon and how that affects perception, like little details like that that just make the setting come alive. And he writes in such a way that is it has this beauty to it. It has this lightness of heart at times, and it also has this depth of darkness. Able to cross through a huge emotional spectrum and do so in a way that feels organic and gorgeous. I just can't sing the praises enough of Guy Gabriel Kay's writing.
Wow. Well, I'm sold. I mean, if any writer, I feel like writing in the fantasy register is so incredibly difficult, especially if you're trying to write like a poetic fantasy and really focus on the language. So yeah, that sounds exactly what I'm looking for. So I'll be reading that soon after I get through my 1,000 other books right now.
Gorgeous, yeah.
Yeah, he's been on the TBR ever since Bridger uploaded his video from the library ladder about like he said the worst Guy Gabriel Kay book is still above average. He's like, and the best ones are masterful, some of the best books he's ever read. You hear about the prose, you hear about how he has bad love scenes, and that's probably his only weakness I've heard from a lot of people is his love scenes can be kind of awkward. But the Fiona Bar Tapestry's been calling out to me. I own it. I've had it for like 3 years. I want to get to it.
Yeah, he does
yeah.
have a lot of sex in his books, a lot of sex. And I know that really bothers some readers. It doesn't really bother me in most of his books. I will say I was not a fan of how he used it in Tigana. I thought those scenes were pretty clunky in there and awkward, but for the most part, I've actually not had a problem with it. But yeah, some people, if you don't like sex in your books, then maybe don't read Guy Gabriel Kay. But if you're okay with it and to see it as part of life, I guess, then it's not so bad, I suppose. But seems like Brian Bell from BellTube here. He says, I recommend Lions, a great starting for Guy Gabriel Kay. I think a lot of people start with Lions or A Song for a Bond, so either one I think is really good. But yeah, Tigana, I still love the book. So I guess I pretty much agree with that sentiment that you said, Jordan. Like even the worst of them are still pretty good. There are a couple, I think the only ones I was not super crazy about, and this is my most unpopular Guy Gabriel Kay opinion, the Sarantine Mosaic didn't quite do it for me. It's a duology set in the Byzantine Empire. It just wasn't, I wasn't crazy about some of the choices in that one, in those two books, but it's still good. Like I still liked it. So yeah. Somebody disagree. There's disagreement here because Sailing Sarantium, that is the first book. It's and you can see the inspiration to with poetry. So that's very much inspired by Sailing to Byzantium by Yeats. So yeah.
I'm sure we'll get to this at some point, but are either of you big fans of George R.R. Martin? Yes?
I am.
Okay.
What about you, Jordan?
I want to, so watching the Game of Thrones show is one of the main things that got me into reading, because I was like, my first time I experienced a show where I'm like, oh, the character work, the story, all these arcs, it's wonderful. How do I get this? Read books. And then I finished the first book, and then someone told me, oh yeah, he's never going to finish that. And it just took the wind from beneath me. Like, and his attitude seems a bit ornery. He kind of frustrates me as like an artist. Fever Dream, I read half of it, was really enjoying it. I read one of his short stories, The Dragon on the Cross, or The Dragon in the Cross. It was wonderful. His short fiction's amazing, very thoughtful. I love the way he talks about his stories. So yeah, I think I'm a fan. I'm becoming a fan. I'm sad that his magnus opus is never going to be complete, or at least I imagine it's never going to be complete, and that's frustrating. I feel like a lot of people have like Stockholm syndrome of that series. So they can't be like, oh yeah, it's fine. Even if it's never finished, it's still amazing. But yeah, I think I'm going to read all of his other works, and then we'll see if I could take that leap to the Song of Ice and Fire.
I heard he's finishing it tomorrow, actually. I got an anonymous source told me that it's coming out tomorrow. So
I'm holding my breath.
Yeah.
Isn't it wild that there's an entire YouTube like channel where they just discuss the latest updates about A Song of Ice and Fire? And it's like, dude, how have you had content for the last 8 years? That's incredible. He's been halfway done.
That shows you how badly people want these books, that there's a huge group of people who will just watch, any sort of like, hey, did George R. R. Martin scratch his butt today? Oh, interesting. What does that say about when's a winner? Okay.
Yeah. What about you? Do you like George R. R. Martin's work? Kate?
I only read the first book in his series. I only read Game of Thrones, and that was 2 years ago. And I had a similar feeling to you, Jordan, I think, where I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to stick this out without it having an ending, in sight. like, it was a good book. I really enjoyed his prose. I like his storytelling. I love the character work. I mean, there's a reason why. You can immediately understand, like, oh, I get why he's so popular and what's so compelling about these books. Um, but yeah, do I need to be it took me a while to read, so I'm a slow reader, so I'm like, maybe I should focus on some other stuff instead of. So once if he ever announces Winds of Winter, then I'll go, okay, maybe I'll read some more of the books.
Yeah.
Like,
I think like nice.
like I bought these when I watched the TV show, not knowing the series wasn't complete, and it's like so beautiful on my shelf. It's like, oh, there's gonna be 2 more. We're not gonna get an edition like this again. It was so depressing. He really broke my heart with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna sound like a total snob saying this, so please forgive me, but I feel I have dual conflicting feelings about the show, because I do appreciate when a show can bring a new fandom or bring people to get excited about the content of the show. I mean, even the show itself, just to be a fan of George R. R. Martin's work, but and maybe even be inspired like you did, Jordan, to buy the books and to pick them up. But I also feel like the downside to it is that the books, I mean, I know I'm going to sound like a snob, like I said, but the books are really, truly so much better. I don't feel that way every single time. I don't feel like that with every single book and adaptation. But with those, it is so much better. And it's such a departure from season 2 on. I think that season 1 is pretty true to the books. But then after that, it's such a departure from what George R. R. Martin wrote. And I just feel like the books are so much better. It's a different experience altogether. So yeah, it makes me sad. I feel like I was very fortunate that I did read the books before seeing the show. I do feel like it helped quite a bit, but yeah, I mean, but then again, I know people who watched the show and then read the books and loved the books. So I'm not saying you can't love it either way, or that you should read the books if you don't want to, but I do feel like they're so good. They're so good.
It was good. I mean, the first book was very good. It was very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's just like, man, I wish I need the ending. I need to know
Yeah.
what happens.
I
And
know.
yeah.
It's hard to accept that there's not an ending. I get it. I got my dad to read the series, and my dad doesn't even read fantasy. And
How
I
could
got him to
you?
pick up the first book because I said, "Look, it's a little bit of a murder mystery. Just
Mhm.
give it a shot." And the next thing I knew, he binged all 5 books, and he has a thick Mexican accent, so he was like, "Joanna, when is the next Martin book coming out?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, Dad, but I don't think it's gonna come out anytime soon." That was like 10 years ago. So yeah.
That's pretty
But
cruel to do to your dad.
I know, I
Get him
know.
hooked on the books.
Maybe that wasn't the nicest Father's Day gift, but
No,
you know,
fans of
what
the
can you
series
do?
just remind me like, oh, hurt people hurt people. It's like it's such an amazing story that it's like, oh, you have to hurt like I do. You have to get to the book. You got to wait around. It's just it's got to be so amazing that people still spread the word about it and it's not complete. It's gonna happen. I saw like the one theory that it's like George R. R. Martin has them complete. He just as soon as he dies, he's gonna publish them so that way he's like, you guys are mean to me. They were already finished. He's doing it out of spite. And that's kind of the best case scenario. He's just doing this out of spite and they're already complete. But
I found
Man.
out about A Song of Ice and Fire through a couple of friends of mine at the time, right before the show came out. And they were telling me, they were like, "We love these books, but damn you, George R. R. Martin." I'm like, "Why do you keep saying damn you, George R. R. Martin?" And they were mad at him back then because he took so long to publish book 5. So they said it's a joke that they love hate this series because he takes so long between books. And now, since book 5, it's been a ridiculously long time. I don't know if we're ever gonna get there, but yeah, it's fabulous. Okay, I have to bring this up. I have to bring this up because I'm gonna hate myself if this ends and I don't bring it up. But Jake, your video on Butcher's Crossing, the Western more disturbing than Blood Meridian, one of my favorite videos of all time.
Oh,
Like,
thank you.
yes, it is that good. I'm just gonna tell everyone, well, you probably need to read Butcher's Crossing first because it is full of spoilers, but read Butcher's Crossing by John Williams. It's the
That's a
same
great book.
author as Stoner.
Yeah.
It's worth reading all 3 of, well, he's written more than 3 books, but it's worth reading it. And go watch Jake's video about it, because I mean, it's complete with sound effects and even like the image of water and everything. It's such an excellent video.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
yeah. Yeah. What is your pitch for why people should read Butcher's Crossing so they could watch your video?
Well, read it so you can watch my video. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think like it's a wonderful book. It's a great Western. It's a really classic Western. It's kind of a perfectly structured novel. It's thrilling. It's man versus nature story, but really is about like all great Westerns. It's about, you know, the myth of the West, and this book especially is about that the death of that myth. It's really brutal. And I think it's a bit of a clickbait title that I put in there about how it's more disturbing than Blood Meridian, the famously disturbing, you know, Western. But to me, it is, because Blood Meridian is very surreal, whereas Butcher's Crossing is a very gritty, kind of realistic story about the death of the bison buffalo throughout the United
Mm.
States in that period of time. So, yeah, it's one of my favorite books. But you know what's crazier is that I still haven't read Stoner.
What?
Oh,
I know.
I did not realize that. Yeah, I don't know
I,
why I never thought to search for that.
I'm a fake John Williams fan. I know. I just like his music, but I mean it's unfortunate because I do want to read it, but it's crazy that maybe Jordan and I have a bit of that rebellious like nature where it's suddenly become huge and everyone's talking about Stoner. You got to read Stoner, and now I'm like,
Don't read it. Yeah,
wow.
no, I agree.
Do I
I
want to read
think
it?
that's the thing is too, is I read it before. I guess I've actually been accused of hyping that book in my corner of BookTube. And so, yeah, I hate overhyping books in general. So maybe
No,
don't
I
read
love
it.
it. I mean, it's great that I mean, I know it's probably a very good book because I love Butcher's Crossing, and it's like it's NYRB. I love NYRB. They're the publishing
Mhm,
label, you know,
mhm.
and a publishing house. So people reading more books and supporting that company, I think is like a huge win. So I love that Stoner has become a phenomenon. It's crazy and weird, but I feel like that's another element too about like the internet, BookTube space, communities online, that books like Stoner just popping up out of nowhere and everyone's talking about it again
Yes.
is really crazy. You know, Lonesome Dove, for basically no reason at all, suddenly has become a huge phenomenon again as well. So, I mean, it's a great book, but you
I
know,
got Philip to read Stoner because he's a medieval professor and it's about a medieval professor. So,
that's
so it's kind of
awesome.
perfect.
That's awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I love what you said, Jordan, in your top books of all time. You talked about Stoner. You said literary alchemy. I just love that phrase.
oh.
Literary alchemy. So well
Mhm.
No,
said.
I love Stoner, and the whole. I actually read Butcher's Crossing because of your video, Jake.
Oh
You
wow.
started off and you said like, oh, just like save this video, come back to it after you read the book, and I like took a year. I took a year, finished the book, went back and watched the video. I was like, oh yeah, I finally did it. It was one of my more satisfying literary experiences, and I actually agree that it's more disturbing than Blood Meridian
Whoa.
Oh wow.
because when I was reading Blood Meridian, and maybe it's because like maybe there's something wrong with me, I kind of read it more of like as a dark comedy because it's just so over the top, evil and violent. But Butcher's Crossing was just so disturbing because of the damage and violence against nature and how
Mhm.
monotonous and heartless it was. Like I was raised by a vegetarian. Like I was vegetarian for 5 years. I had like
Nice.
40 plus animals in the house. Like we're a big animal hippie family. And Butcher's Crossing, I was just filled with such like righteous indignation about what we did to these animals.
Mhm.
And then you figure out that buffalo only exists because they're only still alive because we just bred them up all cows, and now they're all part cow anyway.
Mhm.
It was such an infuriating, beautiful read. And Stoner, yeah, Stoner just it's alchemy. It's more than the sum of its parts. And Stoner, like I think it spoke to something in me because like it starts off at his funeral, and then it goes on to explain like, yo, his life seemed like it didn't amount to much, but here's how beautiful a story is. And I truly believe that if you knew everything about someone's life, you knew all the context, all the highs and lows, everyone's life would be something worth reading. And that book was very therapeutic because one of my worst fears, because like I'm a professional athlete, and my worst fear was clocking in and being a workhorse and not knowing if like what I did amounted to anything. And I was like watching my mom like work a job like 50 plus 50, 60 hours a week. She even owned a business. and all of her time was spent working. So Stoner was just a very therapeutic and painful read. Both of John Williams' books are just so painful and visceral and beautiful, and they make you think, and like they fill you with like hate and love. It's a shame he's only written like 4 novels, because I wish I could have an entire backlog of his books.
Yeah. I so interesting too about you both agree that it's more that Butcher's Crossing is more disturbing than Blood Meridian. I don't think okay, I'll be honest. I watched your video, Jake, and I thought I need to reread this book because I feel like you just explained it or got the book on this level that I feel like I read this book, but I feel like I need to reread this book and think more deeply about the character and without spoilers, what the character of Miller represents, what he represents symbolically, and then think more deeply about what the judge is symbolizing, obviously in Blood Meridian. Just do some comparisons there. It's really interesting. I do see what you mean, though. There is something that feels almost psychedelic or surreal about Blood Meridian. There's something about that. No, that's actually one of the things I love about Blood Meridian. It's pretty violent, though. I mean, there are some scenes that do haunt me from that book, but it's so beautifully written at times. Like the way that McCarthy understood the desert, the way that he described the details of the desert is kaleidoscopic. It's so beautiful, but it's in a way that I could tell that he really studied it. Like he really, really deeply connected to it as somebody who comes from the Southwest. So yeah, I appreciate that about Blood Meridian, but wow, Butcher's Crossing, like that video really is a video to make you change your perspective on a book or to look at a book more deeply. So
well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I feel I'm very proud of that video. You know, it was like kind of taking a risk to I mean, I make most of my videos are a minute long, you know, sketches. So it's like when I do things like that, it is very nice to just like dive in and really focus. And, you know, like I was an English major and everything. So it's like, okay, I get to flex a different muscle and have fun with that. So sorry, my dogs are barking like crazy right now. I don't know if you can hear them, but
yeah.
Can you hear them?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's totally fine. They're very much in the background from what I can hear. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but I love those books. I love Westerns, and I know like Lonesome Dove too is another one that's huge, and I'm glad that you love Lonesome Dove. I love Larry McMurtry, but I've read more of his, you know, like his more contemporary set novels. Well, contemporary for like the 60s and 70s, you know. So like I love The Last Picture Show and Terms of Endearment. Have either of you read any of those other books?
Mm-mm.
No, just Lonesome Dove.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend. One that you both would probably really like is it's called All My Friends Are Going to Be Strangers, and it's kind of like a semi-autobiographical story of him starting out as a writer in the 60s, and it's very funny and all over the place, but just such a great story of being young and stupid. So
Nice.
and that title's, I love that title.
Yeah, that title made me sad already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of sad.
That is a sad title. I already want to read it now just based on that because for whatever reason, like being sad. So yeah, that sounds excellent. One little thing, by the way, about Butcher's Crossing and what you were saying about almost the neat thing about BookTube and bringing back books having a renaissance is that Butcher's Crossing received terrible reviews at the time it was published. It says here in the book, I have this book, by the way, that my friend Evie, who's in the chat right here, she gifted me this novel, which is called The Man Who Wrote the Perfect Novel, John William Stoner and the Writing Life. So thank you so much, Evie. Butcher's Crossing is underrated, she said. Nothing But the Night is severely underappreciated John Williams bibliography. So maybe I need to check that one out too. But it says here that let's see, I'm trying to see what it said here. That basically it was plotless and what was the horrible thing it said? I'm trying to find it here. I know it made him sick. It's practically plotless. An account of 4 men who go out to hunt buffalo, find them, slaughter them, and are caught by cold weather. The work abounds in graphic descriptions, even to, I cannot read that word, sorry, the colors of blades of grass. The story, however, contains little excitement and moves as though hauled by a snail through a pond of molasses. You can leave it anytime. A lot of people will. That
That's
person needs to
crazy.
watch Jake's video. Yeah. Go back in time, watch Jake's video. But
That's a wild review. I haven't. Thank you for reading that. That's so interesting. I mean, some ways you think, I guess it was just so ahead of its time. It came out in 1960 at a time when still people were rushing to the multiplex to go watch westerns, John Wayne
John
movies and
Wayne.
everything.
Mhm.
So it's like this very dark, grim anti-western that it's not plotless, but it's not like about the plot or exciting shootouts or anything. It's just kind of like you want to see how buffalo get killed and all that, then here you go. So but it's a character focused story. So but yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, it does make you really happy to know that or sad to know that he found all this like acclaim and success like after he died, so it's just ironic and sort of bitter that was the case. But now, I mean, he's like a household name. It's wonderful.
Yeah, because he was crushed by that review, is what it said. Like
Mm.
it really hurt his feelings. I don't think that
It
was the
hurt my
only negative
feelings.
review. Yeah, yeah. But it's sad, and sadly, he's not alive today to see how much more popular his books are becoming. And
Mm,
Augustus, also a phenomenal book. Highly recommend.
okay,
Historical fiction, epistolary novel. Yeah, yeah, fabulous. Okay, I
wonderful.
had a couple of questions here that that I starred, so I can get back to them. So, do you love Stephen King? Where do I start? I think both of you like Stephen King because I think I've seen Stephen King on both of your shelves. So, do you two have any
A little
good
bit.
starting points you would recommend?
You go first, Jordan. I'm sure you're more of the expert.
Um, if you're looking for horror Stephen King, I think Revival's really good first pick for Stephen King. I think Revival's really good. If you're going for Stephen King's thrillers, because he's not really a horror author anymore. He kind of writes thrillers. He kind of writes whatever he wants. I think The Institute, I might get a lot of flack for this. I think The Institute's probably one of the best first Stephen King books to read,
Oh well.
and then read Carrie, because it's very similar, because Carrie's about a girl powers, things go bad. And The Institute's about the children that are like Carrie and how different Carrie's life could have been. So I think reading Carrie and The Institute is a great starting point if you're like
Hmm.
looking to get in to see all the aspects of King.
Interesting. Cool. What about you, Jake? Do you have a recommendation? I haven't read either of those, by the way.
My wife Nadia, she loves Stephen King. She recently just read it, and she read one of his recent books that came out. It was something like Fairy Tale.
Fairy
Fairy
tale.
Tale. That she said that's her favorite book now. She loved
Oh,
Fairy Tale. She could not stop raving about it, and I was like, "Oh, damn! Okay, Stephen King, he still got it." I love his I love The Dark Tower, although I still haven't finished it, much to
oh,
a lot of
okay.
people's annoyance. But I stopped like in the sixth one, so I got near the end, but things were getting kind of meta, and then I didn't lose interest. I just lost steam. But I love those books. I love especially the early books in the Dark Tower, the really coked out, drawing of the three and all of that, and the wastelands is just, you could tell there's like you you can feel exactly how much drugs Stephen King is doing based on each book in that series. So it's just a great. I don't know. Are you a Dark Tower fan, Jordan?
Yeah, so I've actually started Wizard and Glass twice. I'm going to finish Wizard and
Mm,
Glass at least this year. The Drawing of the Three for the longest time was my favorite Stephen King book. And it's kind of a spoiler, but the naked gunfight scene is
mm,
one of my favorite scenes in all of fiction. It's just so wild and drug induced. And it's just
absolutely.
so Stephen King. And every time I sell The Dark Tower, I'm like, get through the gunslinger. It's a bit weird, a bit strange.
I love the
Then
gunslinger. I love it.
yeah, the second time I read it, it was wonderful. The first time I'm like, what's
Mhm.
happening? Like, what's all these tangents were going on? But I always say, get through the gunslinger, and then there's a naked gunfight in the Drawing of the Three, and then that should hook you.
The Drawing of the Three reads like a James Cameron fantasy novel in the 80s or something. Like it's so action packed and just schlocky fun. But yeah, I love those. Joe, how much Stephen King have you read?
I mean, not enough, I guess, because I probably haven't even cracked like 10% of his catalog is so prolific, but
Mm.
I have read the Dark Tower series.
Nice.
My favorite is the fourth book, Wizard and Glass.
I love
That's
Wizard
my
and
favorite.
Glass. Yeah.
And it is very Western. And it's interesting because I know that you said this, by the way, in the beginning of to bring it up again, the Butcher's Crossing video, about how a lot of the Westerns we seem to be talking about a lot lately seem to be almost revisionist Westerns or not necessarily traditional Westerns. And
Yeah.
that is totally me. I don't know if I've ever read a traditional Western, but I love a
Yeah.
lot of Westerns that are, I guess, subversive for the genre. And so that might be an example of that. But I loved Wizard and Glass. Fantastic novel. Yeah. And as far as my favorite King, I it's up there with 11/22/63. I really, really love. I think especially the time when I read it, it just spoke to me. And I love time travel and I love Back to the Future. So it just kind of gave me all those vibes that I love. And then the other one that I also love is Pet Cemetery. Pet
Oof.
Cemetery is such an incredible book. It's frightening. I don't recommend it if you have children, maybe.
I couldn't finish it when I read it. I should give it another try, but yeah, I was just kind of I was like, I don't know if I can do this right now.
Oh, yeah. I think it can be time dependent for those books. That's the only thing. I just recently finished on audio. I listened to the audiobook of The Shawshank Redemption because I watched the movie for the very first time last month when I was visiting my family, my parents, and they apparently have like the whole entire movie memorized. I had never seen it before, and
Did you know it was Stephen King when you
Oh,
watched
yeah.
it?
I did know it was Stephen King. Yeah. But I come from a family of King fans, so it's interesting talking to them because it seems like everyone in my family has read different King novels. So it's just interesting to hear their opinions. But The Shawshank Redemption was such an incredible movie. Have either of you guys seen it?
Oh yeah.
I probably am the last person on the planet who hasn't seen it. But I was so blown away by how good that movie was, and I really wanted to I wanted to talk about the movie like I talk about books. Like I wanted to get into the themes. And so I thought, okay, I just need to go ahead and pick up the story. So I listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by Frank Mueller, and it was very good. And I could tell that the movie was an excellent adaptation of that book. Very, very true to the book in many ways. But there were about 10 things that were a bit different in the movie than in the book. And I love the movie more. And that's like one of the very few cases where I could say, I actually preferred the movie over the book. But it's a great movie. It's a brilliant movie because it was an excellent book. So it's one of those situations. But that might not even be a bad place to start with Stephen King because it's short. It's a novella. It's in the is it different seasons? I think short novella collection.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, that one is a good one. I think that's a good one to start with.
Yeah.
No, I think.
Go ahead, Jordan. Go ahead.
I don't know. I think the movie's better than the book, The Shawshank. I think Stephen King has several adaptations where the film is better or just slightly better. Shawshank, I think, is better. I think The Green Mile, even though The Shining is better. I agree. I didn't really like The Shining, the book, as much. It's very slow.
I liked it.
And like the movie was way more surreal and creepy, and how there's not that many frame changes in the movie, so like it builds tension. The movie's perfect. But The Green Mile, I think, is a slightly better adaptation. But Shawshank, when I read it, 'cause I watched the movie first years ago, like just King focused on some of the more unsavory aspects for an extended period of time that kind of messed with the pacing for me. But the movie's perfect. Morgan Freeman, 50 years ago, still old. Did a great job in that.
He's always been old.
He's been old forever.
He was perfect in that movie. I can't get over his performance in that. And I was so shocked because in the book, that character has red hair. So I was like, they really changed things, I think, for the better. But yeah. Jared here.
Hey, Jared.
Hey, Jared. And he says, I think I'm the biggest weirdo about King. The Gunslinger is the only book by him I've ever really liked. Interesting. I think it is much better than the rest.
Of course he does. Of course he is. No, I actually really understand where that comes from, though, because I do think The Gunslinger is very underrated. It's such a beautifully written book. And you could almost read it as like isolated from the rest of the the series if you wanted to, because the series goes on so many different. I mean, each book is like its own different thing. So it's one of those unique fantasy series where it's like each book you're getting something different stylistically. Yeah,
I actually agree with this. Like, I mean, I was like Jordan. I was not super crazy about the Dark Tower when I read it, but I think part of that had to do with expectations where I was at the time I read it. I thought it was okay, but I think I was craving a different kind of fantasy at the time is the problem that I had with it. And I didn't really know what I was getting into. But that said, I think if I reread any book in the Dark Tower, it would probably be The Gunslinger. I'd probably want to reread that book. I feel like I would feel differently about it the second time. But yeah, really interesting. And then the other thing is I'm a fake fan, and I probably shouldn't say this while Jared's in the chat, but I have never read the Wasteland poem. So I feel like I'm a fake fan that I haven't read that.
Oh, like the T.S. Eliot poem?
The T.S. Eliot, yeah.
Oh, that's short. I mean, that's
Is it short? Oh, I thought it was
The Wasteland? Yeah. It's pretty short. You could read it in like half an hour, probably. I don't know, 20 minutes.
Just do that this afternoon. Yeah, because yeah. So that's another area where I need a remedy in my reading is just to read more poetry in general as well.
Me too. I need to read more poetry. I love poetry, but that's another thing, like short stories, that's like zero interest right now online or anywhere. Like, just people really aren't talking about poetry in the same way. I mean, it's funny because you read like the letters of like Hemingway and Fitzgerald or whatever, and the writers of their time period, and they're talking about how like poetry is the most important art. Like that's true writing. Poetry is where you are a true writer, and all these novelists, they're failed poets, and now it's like just a totally different thing. People ignore poetry. It's sad.
It is sad, and I always want to get into it more. I have been getting into poetry just a little bit here and there, a little bit more. And I have a background in classical music, so a lot of the art song that I've studied back in college a lot of it was based on poetry by Goethe or Heinrich Heine. So I have some familiar with some poetry, but there's a lot there that I feel like I need to get into and learn more. I did buy a Yeats book, and I need to get through it, but yeah, it's something that feels like, to me, poetry feels like a lonely art. It feels like a lonely art in a way because, like you said, it doesn't feel like people want to get together in groups and have as much conversation about a poem as they do about a book or even a short story for that matter, but I could be wrong. What about you, Jordan? Have you ever gotten into poetry?
So at my private school, oratory was very important, so we were always memorizing poems. So like from 5th to 8th grade, I was memorizing like probably like 8 to a dozen like poems a year, and we were always having to recite them in front of the school. So I have a little bit of baggage when it comes to poetry, and I've probably read a dozen or so like the modern poetry, and I feel like poetry used to be about themes and symbolism. So you have to dissect a poem and what it means. But I feel like modern poetry, like the rupee cars and the things like that, they're just saying something very direct in a way where there's no need to decipher anything in a very beautiful way. So it's more of just, I feel like modern poetry is more just public speaking in like an eloquent way. There's no meter. It's a little too modern for me now, but I still have sonnets memorized. I still have Robert Frost's poems memorized. But yeah, I have a lot of baggage and I love it, but I don't like where it's going. And I feel like just like for short stories, I feel like we should be in a golden age of poetry and a golden age of short stories, because you could put a poem in one slide on social media. You could have a thread and you could send those to people. But yeah, I could always need more. I want to read some T.S. Eliot. I want to finish all of Robert Frost's stuff. I read all of Shakespeare's sonnets when I was in high school, and I really enjoyed them. Wow. I want to get back into it.
That's impressive. I have the sonnets on my shelf, but I've read maybe one or two. I still haven't. I need more discipline in this area. Clearly, I need more discipline in this area.
Sonnet 116, I still have it memorized. I memorized it when I was 10. And I remember one time I was on a date with a girl, and she was a big Shakespeare buff, and I like recited the poem. Yeah, it worked. It was wonderful. It's just like that one line from the Dead Poet Society. We read poetry to woo women. I was like, oh yeah, I got to sort it for you. It'd be perfect.
That's awesome. I love that. Didn't you share a story about how you wasn't there some connection with books and meeting your wife? Am I correct about that?
Yeah. Um, so I met my wife on a dating app, and that's a whole other thing. But I remember she saw that I was a professional athlete, and she was like, "No, I wasn't gonna swipe on that." But then she scrolled, and there was a picture of like me reading a book. It's like, "Oh, I like to read this book, and this and that." So she agreed to. She swiped because she wanted to talk to a guy that liked books. And then when we met, I wanted to impress her. So this is when I was in my dude bro stage. I was just reading self help and business and Robert Greene. I was reading all the stuff to become the best political operative I could be. And then she had this one book by Patricia Briggs, The Hobbes Bargain, and it's Beauty and the Beast retelling. And I read it so I could like relate to her about it. And I feel like it's just a novel. I'm like, okay, I'll just read this and I'll remember a few things. I'll bring it up next time I visit her because we were long distance. And I binged it in like a day and a half. I absolutely loved it. And from that point forward, I started reading fiction. And my wife, she's more widely read than me. I wish she had a channel. She's so camera shy.
Wow.
But she read all of Discworld books like last year. And Terry Pratchett is exhausting to read. I love Terry Pratchett, but he's very hard to binge. But yeah, my wife, she got me into stories, and I'm forever thankful.
That's amazing. I love that story. That's cool. That's very cool. What about your wife, Jake? I know that you two have a channel, Woman Carrying Man. Is that correct? Yeah. And there you all talk mostly about movies.
Movies, yeah. Yeah, we review movies over there. But yeah, she's a huge reader. What she does, she's a binge reader as well. So she'll find a book, but she has to finish it in like 24 hours or else she's like, she can't do anything else. So it's like she was reading it and I'm like, honey, you're going to need a little more time to get through it. And she's like, I'm finishing it tomorrow. And she did. She did. I don't know how she does that, but I can't do that. I'm such a slow reader. But yeah, we met in English class. We went to the same community college and then we had classes together and we both transferred to UCLA and everything. So yeah, we met through reading as well. Yeah, it's important to us. And now we have a house that's full of too many books that we don't know what to do with.
That's so neat. That's so neat. Yeah, my husband is somewhat of a reader. He's not nearly as much of a reader as I am, especially when it comes to fiction. But every now and then I'll get him to pick up a book. But
do you ever try to sneak him books as like presents and stuff? And yeah,
I do try. I haven't had the best luck, but I've gotten him to read a couple of things. He did read Stoner and Clara and the Sun.
Nice.
And yeah, and he liked both of those books quite a bit. Yeah, he tried to read a Game of Thrones. I think he got bored. He took way too long to read it though. Like he spread it out over like 6 months, and then he kept getting confused about who is who, and oh no, there's a betrayal and political stuff. Okay, whatever. So he wasn't really into that, but that's okay.
Some of those fantasy books you really have to read quickly, or else you lose track of what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Jake, I know you said that. So crime fiction, would you say that's your favorite genre?
I think right now, yeah, it's like my special interest, and it's funny because I feel like through Stephen King, I got introduced to a bunch of new writers, and that's always how I find great writers too, is you just see what the influences of your favorite writers are and everything. And I know, Stephen King talked a lot about these great crime fiction writers, Patricia Highsmith and Chester Himes and James Ellroy, and I learned through him about Donald Westlake, who he kind of based the dark half on the situation of Donald Westlake, who had a pen name, Richard Stark. And of course, Stephen King had his pen name too. So, Richard Stark, as Donald Westlake writing as Richard Stark, he wrote these crime novels in the 60s and 70s that are very gritty and mean about like a really brutal, tough criminal called Parker. And they've been adapted in a bunch of different movies and over the years. But it's completely different from how he was writing as Donald Westlake. He wrote like funny crime novels, like The Hot Rock, really funny, light, like entertaining. Think like the Coen Brothers type of like crime story. So that kind of like diversity of output and uh, those types of writers I'm really drawn to, writers who on the surface seems like they're writing very craft oriented, like lean, tight fiction, but the poetry comes out like under the surface. It's not overt, but it's there. And like that type of writing, I'm just blown away by. A writer like Richard Block, who wrote a ton of wrote a ton of books about a single detective. One of the books in that series is called 8 Million Ways to Die. It's probably the most famous one, but it's his writing on the surface just seems very lean and uninteresting, but it's so effective and extremely well done that like as a writer, I'm so in awe of that type of writing that seems so unintrusive and stuff. I have to ask, because I know this is something that every booktuber has to face at some point. So, either of you writers yourself, and do you have any intention of writing or publishing?
What about you, Jordan? You answer this first.
I remember in middle school, me and my cousins used to write stories together, and like we would recite them at like in front of my private school. Yeah, I used to really like writing. I don't think I have a talent for it, but since I've been reading short stories, I think eventually I'll write some short stories, probably just for myself, or probably would just, I don't know, maybe make a pen name or a pseudonym. That way I could hide from the embarrassment of them not being very good. But writing, I think it's just one of the best art forms. I would love to be a writer. Maybe one day I'll, bite down and just go down and give it a try. I've talked to, he's from the Thomas Grabasi. He's a journalist I've been talking to for like 6 years for my day job. And he's always been telling me, he's like, you need to write, Jordan. You need to write. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll write like a biography. He's like, not a biography. You need to write fiction. I need to see what stories are in your brain. So he's been pushing me to write for years. So maybe eventually I'll do it.
Oh, that's neat.
You
Nice
should.
encouragement. Yeah. I am not a writer. I write in my journal every day. I keep a reading journal. I love keeping a reading journal because I feel like it helps me to think through what I'm reading and analyze writing techniques. So I love to analyze the way somebody writes or figure out what it was in the writing that drew me in or the themes that I'm noticing come about. I love looking at those little details and analyzing them. I enjoy sometimes reading books about writing, but I myself have no ambition to be a writer. I don't know why. I almost wonder why. Like, why? What's wrong
What's
with
wrong
me?
with you?
I know, for real. Why not write? But yeah, it's for whatever reason, it's not something I feel any pull towards, except for, like I said, journaling and exploring that. So maybe like someday as a nonfiction writer, I would publish stuff. Who knows? But no, not necessarily. What about you though? So you're interested in writing? Are you
I'm
writing a
interested.
novel?
I'm writing a novel. Yeah, I'm interested in writing. So I love I love. I've always loved writing, but it takes priority at different times in your life. So I yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because I feel like so much, and I love talking to people who aren't interested in writing, but they love to read because it's like I feel like that's the purest way to really appreciate a book. And I can, there are times when I'm like, I want to read this book because I'm interested in it from like a craft level. I want to see like how it was written, but also just to read a book that's just like just moves you purely. It's a different level. Yeah.
That's so neat. What kind of book are you writing, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. It's a horror novel, so yeah, hopefully I finish that at some point. Who knows what I'll do with it, but yeah, it's fun. I worked for many years, not many years, but I worked for several seasons working as like uh, a performer at one of those haunted houses, one of those Halloween events. I've
Mm.
dressed up as Michael Myers and pretend to stab people and scare the shit out of them. So it's kind of based on my experiences there. So yeah.
That sounds amazing. I would love to read that book. That sounds so fun. Wow, that's so neat. So how long have you been working on this project, and how do you fit it into your schedule? Because I know you're so busy with your channels.
Oh yeah, I don't know. It's like I just ignore my child and just pay people to look after him while I write. I mean, I don't know. It's like I've been working on it for 5 years, and it's not a long book at all. So it's just kind of like on and off. Thank you, Jared. Yeah, I'm writing it's actually a romantasy series called A Man of Carrying and Things. That actually doesn't sound too far off from some modern romantasy titles, actually. So
I love this, like a horror novel that suddenly turns into a romantasy series. That's fantastic. I'm here for it. Fabulous. What about you, Jordan? As a UFC athlete, professional UFC athlete, how do you make the time to read? I should ask you that as well.
Well, luckily, my job is I only probably train 30 hours a week tops. So I have a lot of free time. And I live in Pahrump, so I have an hour commute both ways. So I have a lot of time just to myself. And I feel like, to be like, the ideal is to be able to like have your job and have your interests and work out and be healthy. And my job kind of handles all of that.
But what is your job, Jordan? I'm so curious. I'm sorry.
Oh, just I fight for the UFC. So a few times a year I fight in the cage, and
I didn't know this. That's crazy. Oh my god.
I tagged his account on Instagram. You should check it out because he has a lot of really cool footage of his stuff.
Yeah, I've been fighting for 12 years. I've been in the UFC for 6. I guess I'm kind of a veteran of the sport now. It's really not to know I'm a fighter. I love that. It makes me so happy.
Yeah, you're like a big deal. Like you have a Wikipedia page, I noticed.
That is so cool.
That was a crazy thing. Like after one of my fights, I realized I had a Wikipedia page. I'm like, Mama, I made it. People know who I am. But my name has a blue. My name's blue on Wikipedia. Yeah, I've been fighting since I was 19. I've worked jobs, but even when I was working jobs, I was still fighting and training. So it's just kind of weird. I had a dream when I was 15, and I'm doing it, and I just never. I don't know what it's like not to do it. So it's weird, but I feel like I have so much free time, and I have so much energy, and I like what I do, and I'm passionate about it. And luckily, I haven't been like concussed too bad, so I could still read. That's one of my worst fears, like losing the ability to read, losing my mental faculties. But yeah, I think it's a pretty sweet deal. I get to be healthy, and there's a few days of the year where I'm scared out of my mind, and I'm about to, I have to fight the inner coward. But yeah, it's just cool. Like I get to focus on my art and my same hyperfixation for the last 15 years, and I haven't been hurt, and I just like there's just something really meaningful about, because I know a lot of other jobs, and one of the things that took me away from focusing on academia and going into law school, we were doing the applications for law school and getting your professors and getting your character letters so law schools will like you. And I was just put off by everything. It was like, I get in because of my connections. I don't get in because of just me. It's like I'm Data. I'm just this black guy with a single mom, and these professors really like me. You should have me in your school. And it was just putting me through a crisis. And I was just drawn to fighting because it's just me. And even though I could be making more money or doing something in some ways more fulfilling, I get to like drive to my home and my family. And I know that everything we have is because of me fighting in a cage and training, and no one got it for me. It's just very freeing. So I'm on a tangent, but I love what I do. I have a lot of time to read great stories.
That's so cool. I feel like it's such a cool dichotomy there. If, like, you have this life as a reader, and this is your passion as well. Like that's so. I don't think I've ever spoken to a UFC fighter before, so this is a first for me. Very, very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I feel like we'll have to have another conversation after this one of these days to talk about all of that, because that's so interesting.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
I'm sorry I brought it up so late. I did actually mean to bring this up earlier, but yes.
No, it's fine. It gave me time to warm up. I used to, for the longest time, be embarrassed that I was a UFC fighter. Like, I was okay if people already knew I was a fighter, but a lot of people would just make these snap judgments about me. And some of them are true. I'm not gonna lie, some of them are true. But it's like, oh, you're a fighter, you must be this, 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 and that.
Mhm.
And it was always so disheartening. And I was embarrassed by it. And I shouldn't be embarrassed by it because I love what I do. But yeah, no, I'm getting more comfortable talking about it and just kind of meshing or merging the aspect of my life, being a more complete person.
Do you feel like there's any like fiction novel or book or anything you've read that captures well like the lifestyle and experience of being a UFC fighter? Is there anything out there for people to read that you've read?
Not to get too dramatic, but The Old Man and the Sea has always been very, I feel like it's always resonated very strongly with me because
Oh wow.
the guy's doing something. A lot of people are like, oh, it's not the best thing you could be doing, but he's just reminiscing and he's just capturing this giant fish and he's thinking about all these past memories that led to this moment. And in fighting, people see a few times a year a fight on TV and they see like 15 minutes. But most of what I do is I go in every day and we're focusing on the same few techniques, and there's stories spread out throughout it. And The Old Man and the Sea has always resonated very strongly with me because a lot of people, when I was first doing this, didn't see a lot of value in it, and they thought I was wasting my time. But I loved it, and I was passionate about it. And a few times a year, I get to like chase after my big marlin, and I get to struggle for it. And it's kind of like watching an anime or something. Like I'm having flashbacks during the fight. You could hear your coaches saying something. You could just feel the energy of the crowd. And then, very much like The Old Man in the Sea, after the fight, there's just this giant, no matter what happens, there's this giant emotional down. Because all this work led up to this one moment. And then even if you win or you lose, there's just like a dark, like not a darkness, but this sense of loss. And The Old Man in the Sea, he goes on this thing, and at the end, it's not ideal. I feel like fighting's kind of like that, even though it's wonderful in the moment. Sometimes, even after a win, I'm just like, dude, that was it? All this pressure, all this toil for just that? And now I'm just back home, and I'm reading Stoner, I'm finishing Silence of the Lambs, and I'm just bouncing my baby on my knee. It's just weird. Sometimes I just forget how strange my job is. And that's wonderful. So,
Wow. That's neat.
That's fascinating. I feel like you'd be a great writer, just the way you're talking about, the experience and telling that story. Because like, also the way you talk about like that work, I really relate to that. Although I'm not a fighter by any means at all whatsoever, but that concept of working really hard for something, and then when you get it, or when you like get that high, it's like that down is really weird. Even when you're feeling good about something, it's like, what's the next mountain to climb? What's the next battle that you work up towards? And I feel like that's something to always like be chasing after. Yeah. That's very interesting.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I also want to go ahead and, because I spoke so much praise about Jake's video, the Butcher's Crossing video, both of these channels are fantastic. And I also just want to say my praises for Jordan's channel as well, because I know that your channel is fairly new, right? Like you've only been doing BookTube for, actually, how long have you been doing BookTube? Maybe I'm wrong that your channel's new.
I think I published my first video like 5 years ago, but
What?
So originally, I remember I was inspired by Daniel Green and Murphy. It was 2020, and the world was like shut down.
I started in 2022, yeah.
But not, oh dang, I was here before you. I suck. But
no, I started in 2020 as well. Sorry, I said 2022.
I was like, oh dang. But I would just do weekly vlogs, and I had like 14 people that would watch them. And then I did like 3 book review videos. I was bad at it, so I was just doing vlogs about like my weekly. It's like more of like a video diary. And then I had a big high profile fight where my opponent mentioned my YouTube channel, and then it brought a bunch of people just to troll me, and it ruined my analytics, and I stopped doing it for a long time because I hate fight fans. I hate them. I don't hate them, but when they're mean, they're mean. Sports fans are crazy. And then I started I think I watched a video from Brian from BellTube, and when he first started his channel, and I just loved Brian's energy, and he was just talking about, he's like, well, I did business. My background was this, and I've been studying this. I want to start a channel, and here's what I want to do. He had all these goals. He had this infectious energy, and I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to try to talk about books at length. I'm going to try to talk about books. So yeah, when Brian started, when I first started really thinking like, oh, I actually want to do this. So.
Well, we are so grateful and fortunate to have you because your channel is fantastic. I love the way you talk
Thank
about
you.
books, the energy you bring. I just watched your Foster review by Claire Keegan, which is a book I love. So yeah, absolutely. Everybody should be checking out Jordan's channel as well. These are both fantastic channels. And I just want to thank you both so much for joining me this afternoon for Why Read. What a special episode. So
Thank you, and shout out Joanna for having us and for having a lovely
thank you for
channel,
having
and bringing all these people together to talk about books. I get to meet Jordan and get to talk to you. So this was a
Nice to
wonderful
meet you
time.
too.
Yeah, thanks for having
yay.
us.
I always have an intuition about these things, about who to bring together. I try my best. So this was wonderful. Thank you guys so much. And thank you guys in the chat for joining us today. I know we didn't get to everybody's question. I see Evie has one here. When are you reading The Everlasting? I need to get your thoughts on it. So I'm sure you'll get a response from Jordan, or you can give it really quickly if you want to.
Oh no, I'm definitely gonna be reading Everlasting, The Success of the Saint, which is why I started reading short stories. Same author. Evie, I had it on hold, and then you said you had mixed feelings about it, so I took it off of hold because I'm like, well, I trust Evie's taste. But I'll put it back on hold. I'm gonna read it, and we can talk about it. But
Evie
you
is very
scared me.
persuasive about getting us to read certain books. So yes, thank you everybody so much. I'm so grateful you're all here. And thank you if you're watching the replay. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you.